Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Suman McPhail, and this week's demo day is on governance and the future of organizations. We have a bunch of people joining us today, and we decided to combine all of the demo days just because so many of the projects were relating to each other, and we thought it'd be more fun to just have a big conversation. Um, yeah. Should we start off with introductions, or should we just like jump right into some projects?
I think that maybe a little intro on why that intro was relevant would be useful. So, like that is an organization, right? And it very much resonates with kind of the
Mm-hmm.
famous book and now movie. Uh,
We're live.
oh, nice. Um,
Oh gosh.
resonates
Okay.
with this story, Ready Player One. Um, and the idea that you can have an organization that spans around the world with kids inside of a effectively like a metaverse built off the most popular video game ever created, but then enhanced times 1,000 uh, by the coolest Minecraft engineer in the world that we found through the Twitterverse. um, and to have like it's like a new. I think one of the ways, if I'm going to go ahead and pitch like the single most highest conviction view on the future of organizations, whether it's uh, grown-ups with their careers or kids in school, that everything's going to get more fun. Everything's going to get more fun. People are going to have more autonomy. And the reason why is because if you're a school or you're a company or any other kind of organization and people aren't enjoying it, they're going to leave. And they're going to create their own, or they're going to find one with other people that share their deep interests, that share their passions, that share their values, that share their mission, because there's just so much choice. There's so much choice because software, Web3, everything that's changing about technology is enabling the cost of collaboration to drop to zero and the cost of creation to drop to zero. And so that's why you're seeing this proliferation, whether it's the startup boom or the explosion of different ways of learning, just across the board. I think that's the biggest, highest conviction view. I think it's important for education. I think it's important for capital markets. I think it's important for WEquil startups and the kinds of companies that are coming in. So that's why we put it all in one, because it's all related. And so this is going to be an interesting conversation.
It's also in terms of like thinking about organizations, if you aren't able to relate it across like organizations of all types, then it's probably like incorrect or it should only be applied in specific areas. So
Yeah,
mm.
maybe we could start with Shirag, because he was writing at a high level about governance and organizations. So happy to have him kick us off. And then Sume, I'll let you just lead the way since you're running more than half the community anyway. So you know what to do.
Okay, so for this demo day, I basically wrote like a short introduction on what we're going to be talking about, and that is like organization in general, and I guess government more specifically. Um, so one theme in my thing for today was like increasing democratization of like organization. So like governments a long time ago were feudal, they were controlled by a few people at the top. But nowadays there's a lot more choice involved for everyone. And that I think that's increasing with time. And I also took a look at what we might encounter in the future of governance. And to do this, I looked at a concept I did for another demo day, which was the decentralized autonomous organization. And we're seeing a lot of those now where information is stored on a ledger in the blockchain, and a group of investors with more than 50% of the, I guess, the ownership of the of something can decide on what it's going to be used for in a decentralized autonomous organization. Um, so yeah, that's basically what I've been writing. I also did like a short run through of the different types of governments that we see today, like a democracy, different types of democracies, and then other one-party states, like in China and stuff like that. So that's basically what I've been doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Shirag. Um, so yeah, just feel free to chime in with insights from your article. We've got a bunch of folks here and a bunch of different topics, so I'm happy to just keep plowing away into different subjects. And when anybody has questions or thoughts, just jump in. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Isla's project on the digitization of organizations is really awesome. She also presented it for the private demo. But
All right, Isla, go Isla, go.
Isla, do you want me to share my screen or do you want to share it?
I've already got it pulled up.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Should I zoom in more? Is it or is
Yeah,
this
yeah. Just always zoom in more than you think makes sense because it just is easier for everybody else.
okay? So in this article, I talked about the digitalization of organizations. So specifically, how organizations are becoming more digitalized, the impact, and why it is relevant. So, as you all know, technology has been changing the world. And I think this topic is very important because we should probably want to know more about how this is going to affect us and the benefits and downsides. Okay, so first, how are organizations becoming more digitalized? Well, one of the main things that caused people to become more dependent on our digital tools was the pandemic. So we had to jump to relying on like computers and phones. And once we realized we could function like that, we started using it to do a lot of other things such as learning, working, meetups, and entertainment. So also when the pandemic happened, more kids started homeschooling, and they started and mostly relied on the internet to receive their education. Okay, so the next thing I talk about is the impact. So now that a lot of organizations are becoming more digital, people everywhere around the world can get job opportunities, or let's say they can stay in their jobs if they move. So this leads to organizations becoming bigger and bigger because there's such a small limit to how many people you can reach. This also causes companies like Apple and Microsoft to become more powerful too because there's more demand for their kind of products. So why is this important? Well, there are so many reasons why the digitalization of organizations is important. But I think the main thing I hit on with this article is that because people are depending on these digital tools more and more, it's becoming so much more relevant in our daily lives. So we want to be able to know the benefits and downsides of this new revolution because it's just that so much more important. Okay, so thank you for listening to my presentation. That was my article about the digitalization of organizations. I also link in this article to first principles of a successful organization if you are interested in that topic. That's it.
Very cool. Okay. I should probably clarify that nothing that we say or write is investing advice. I did not in any way ask Isla to mention Apple or Microsoft. I didn't even know that she wrote about that until now, which is quite interesting. There's an assertion there. You're asserting that the impact of digitization. Well, first of all, amazing project. All right, we do rounds of applause now.
I was not trying to market Apple or Microsoft.
Right, got it. No, you're doing great. I'd say just in general, be careful. Anytime you mention a company or a publicly traded security, always put something at the bottom that's a disclaimer that says whether or not you own the security, and also mention that it's not investing advice. It's okay.
It's funny. We and Isla and I, we were making our first videos for the McPhail Market Minute. That's what we called it, and then we were like, "This is not investing advice. We are just kids."
It's very cute. So there's an assertion there about the impact of digitization on organizations having them become larger. And that contrasts with the views that I was just sharing with our capital markets team just before the call, just before this podcast. So I don't know. Chirag, Rishi Vishal, Sume.
I think what she was saying is they have the potential to become larger because you can reach more people.
Okay, well, now that's definitely true. I mean, so just the advent of email and the internet really helped companies become larger just because it was so much easier to communicate. The challenge of communication really helped or really hindered growth of companies. So that would be one. So yeah, I can see that.
Also, the cost of collaboration goes down quite dramatically, and Sumi is going to talk about this a lot more in her project. But nowadays, when companies realize that maybe we don't need a large physical space, a large office space that could be very costly, to house our employees, we can, people can work remotely. That cost goes down dramatically, and so you're able to have these teams that are larger at a lower cost. And so I think that's like a really good point from Isla's article. Another thing I wanted to mention, I thought the mention of the pandemic was very interesting, because when we think about digitization, a lot of these tools that we use to work in digital teams existed before the pandemic, but really what the pandemic brought was more of a mindset shift, a cognitive revolution, in the sense that we realized that we can use these tools effectively in certain paradigms that we had before about needing to be in a physical space together to work effectively, or just a lot of these ideas that we had were really challenged during the pandemic. And I think that was the big part of it, which allowed us to use these tools and succeed during the pandemic, and realize that we really can have a lot more autonomy over how we work, being able to work in a self-directed manner, being able to work in a way that doesn't require just being at an office from 9 to 5, but really if you can demonstrate that you can complete your projects, complete them effectively, that can actually be more efficient for organizations and businesses in general. So to Joe's point at the beginning about how the trend we're going in, that work is going to be more fun and it's going to be more autonomous, being able to use technologies as tools and knowing how to use them is what's really going to allow us to have that freedom and flexibility, to be able to work our own hours, to be able to complete projects and collaborate regardless of where you are in the world. So that kind of freedom and autonomy is being seen quite a bit. And I think it was a mindset shift more than anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe we could just quick go around and say where everybody's from. Falls Church, Virginia.
Both from Panama.
Nairobi, Kenya.
Connecticut.
And Raleigh, North Carolina.
And then Isla's outside in the dark underneath some lights.
We've got Abhinav from India.
Yeah, Abhinav, yeah. Oh,
it's kind of
yes.
yeah, we keep forgetting he's there.
Yeah, clearly Abhinav is not working 9 to 5, which goes to my point, because it is quite late in India. He's collaborating with us from the other side of the world late at night. So
yeah.
Thank you, technology.
Well, I think that that's one of the things I was also sharing with our capital markets team heading into this is that um, WEquil Group is so much at this at the crosshairs of all of these different trends that I was trying to prevent myself from being biased in some way because I'm living in it, and so I don't want to think that the rest of the world is living in it. But I really don't think maybe we might be ahead of the curve, but I don't think that the curve is going to change. But anyway, maybe we could go around and do it. There's so many good projects, so maybe we should get them all out there, and then we can just see where the conversation goes. Because I feel like this is like the prepared remarks we want to get out.
Okay. Should I go next?
Sure.
Okay.
Then we can have Rishi come in after you, and then I think we'll be ready to.
Cool. Yeah.
Wait, are you gonna present your healthy recipes, or is that not related?
That's not related.
That would be a real
but
stretch.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I wrote an article on self-directed collaboration. This is the kind of the process that we use for many of the teams across WEquil Group, especially the WEquil app team. And I think that it is definitely touching on some of these things where like people are kind of rethinking how organizations can function. And so I elaborate a little bit more about that in my article. So I mean, this is most certainly not how most people like go about trying to collaborate within organizations. But kind of the way that we took it is that we want people to be
Use the side slider if you can.
oh yeah. We want so self-directed collaboration is basically where you have a goal and basically people in the team can think about how they can use their strengths to add the most value to achieve that goal. So you're very kind of self-directed and thinking about how can I use what I'm good at to add value. And so
Yeah.
And so also with collaboration is that you're working in a team of people. And so you want to make sure that people are like communicating what they're doing and stuff like that. So this provides a lot of flexibility and enables individuals to have influence over like what they are actually contributing to the project that they are working on. So kind of the first thing is that you need to have a defined goal, and one thing that's very different about self-directed collaboration is that people within the team can have influence over what the goal is and say like, okay, I think that this should be the goal and provide their input into what that should be. And so since people are kind of like thinking about what they're going to do and providing input over how they want to achieve it, like no one's telling you what to do. You have to kind of jump in and say, okay, given the goal, given what we're trying to achieve, how can I use what I'm good at, my competencies to add the most value? And so you do need to have people to that like can take initiative, but also you want to make sure that everyone is socializing the ideas and what they want to work on because I mean, since you're kind of just self-directing yourself, you want to make sure that what you're doing is actually moving towards the goal and is helpful and fits into what other people are doing. You don't want two people working on the same thing at once, since it is you are collaborating with other people, and that really does require you to have a lot of communication going on since people are kind of just directing themselves. I mean, I also talk a little bit more about socializing your improvements. I mean, you want to be kind of be socializing what you're doing a lot. Like you want to socialize, here's what I think I should be working on. Then you want to socialize your kind of like your minimum viable product or like whatever you've worked on, kind of communicating the idea. Like this is the same for projects. It's also the same for socializing your improvements. You don't want to spend a whole lot of time working on one thing and then you finally show it to people and they don't like it. Like, you don't want to waste your time like that. And so you want to be constantly socializing what you're doing and making sure that you're on the right track, since you are the one self-directing yourself and coming up with what you want to do. And so one of the downsides to this, I mean, you could call it a downside, or it could also be beneficial. But since there's no one telling you what to do, this self-directed collaboration, like, type of way to kind of like collaborate with people to create something big, it isn't for everybody. Like, you can't have people who aren't able to take initiative and try to socialize their ideas and take feedback and have their own ideas. And, like, basically, you have to have very autonomous people who are, like, able to self-direct themselves but also collaborate with others. And so this is the kind of the way that we are building out WEquil.app. This is the process that our WEquil.app team uses. And so I also link to our Sink or Swim program if you are interested in joining.
Okay. So I'd like to share a couple thoughts on that to show the relevance to organizations more broadly, and then some of the different organizations within WEquil Group. I think that this is another key component of the future of organizations, because it relates to this idea that we will increasingly want to work and play. Like, I think the whole concept of work and play and work and leisure is going to start to merge more from this. But part of this stems from the fact that one can have more autonomy. That's the self-direction. So you're getting to have more choice in what you're doing. That's part of what drives and makes this more meaningful and more fun and enjoyable for folks. And it also unlocks creativity. It unlocks the ability for an organization, like say a decentralized autonomous organization. The reason why we have a really bullish call on value locked in organizations generally, and the amount of capital that plows into these to just continue to go up for maybe multiple decades would be my guess, is because it's like the ultimate form of an organization that allows the decentralization of authority, such that as long as you can get buy-in from other people within that organization to support you, that you're essentially able to create your own job. You're able to grow your own career and have that follow your interests, right? And it can change over time and be very flexible. That's really powerful. That's like the opposite of how you might think of a king of England 500 years ago, operating and trying to control like a monarchy type organization, where it's very much top down controlled, and you had almost like no autonomy whatsoever in terms of what you were going to do. Like 80% of everybody basically just had to farm, and if you didn't produce enough and you weren't able to pay taxes of what you created, you're in big trouble. But then within WEquil Craft, this is an interesting thing. That's like one example of like, okay, if we have 1,000 kids join, now that we've launched this, we've got this promo video, they can just join. How do you create chaos? How do you take the chaos that would normally happen on a server, but use self-directed collaboration to train an army of Java Jedi to start to, combined with the power of Ronan's just ingenuity and what he's managed to put together, to actually hone this into a community of developers, of kids that are teaching and creating within like its own metaverse school, so that it's self-directed, kids have autonomy, but it's also collaborative and not complete chaos, right? It's challenging to do that.
Yeah, especially because we were talking to Gavin about like what he did in Minecraft, and he said he was like taking other people's pet cats and putting them in lava.
See, he wasn't collaborating.
Yeah, that was it.
He was just burning cats.
Yeah.
And then maybe Mboya and Abhinav, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If the two of you could share a bit about how Abhinav joined, and how you guys went through that process, just to kind of illustrate it for people. I think that would be really helpful. Would that be cool, Mboya? Maybe Mboya, you could take the lead on that, and then Abhinav here, you can have your moment to shine, so you can share this with your parents, to talk about your experience doing self-directed, but still collaboration within the WEquil app team. I think it'd be cool.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So I think I'd first start with when he joined, he had this awesome project that he had made using Flutter, where it was basically a Netflix on the phone. So that got us so excited to start working together. Then he has these wonderful ideas about the UI, for example. So he just comes, he states, for example, he already had the spirit because he'd have the where can I help? He looks at this, he looks at the UI, he decides, I have these ideas for the homepage that I really think we should work on. So he says the idea, I think we all like it. We let him go ahead, and yeah, we've been able to see his results recently. It's been good.
What do you
So
think? What do you think, Abhinav, of self-directed collaboration?
Yeah. Hello.
Oh, we can hear you. Feel
Yeah.
free. Feel free to elaborate. I mean, do you know that? So this is your first job, so you probably don't know. This is not the way that organizations typically operate. Do you know that?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, you've been
Yeah.
spoiled. You can be disappointed now for the rest of your life. Congratulations. Welcome to WEquil Group. All right. All right, man. I don't want to put you on the spot. We've got another really great article, or I'd say some thoughts. I mean, we've been spending a lot of time talking within WEquil Capital about this particular topic. So, Rishi, if you want to share some prepared remarks, then I think that's the last. Actually, there's one more project. I want to get to the one that you wrote in 10 minutes after this one.
Oh,
Sume.
that one. Yeah.
That's a good one, even though it was in
A
10
better
minutes.
idea though to go over is this about the shared the principle, the first principles of an organization? The article.
Should we do that one first?
Yeah.
Should we do that one first? All right, let's do the
Okay,
context.
okay.
All right.
Sure.
And if you don't believe that she did it in 10 minutes, you can actually watch the live stream.
Yep, it's right there.
Okay.
Okay. So we wrote this article in 10 minutes live on WEquil Live, and we actually do that every Tuesday on WEquil Live. That's our writing an article in 10 minutes day.
So if you think live streaming video games like Ronan does is exciting, you should watch Sume live stream or Google Docs. Man, it's incredible. All right, go ahead.
And so basically in this article we kind of talk about the first principles of an organization, and what do you need in order to have an organization. And so we came up with 3 things. This is like, in our opinion, what do you really need in order to have a functioning organization? The first thing is community, and like having a mission and values. And so like this is needed in order for you to actually have an organization that functions and like has a purpose to do something, or else like what is the point of having an organization that does nothing? And then the second one is the cost of collaboration and knowledge sharing, and I mean more specifically just like not a very high cost of collaboration and knowledge sharing. This is like tools like Zoom and Slack are very enabling to allow that to essentially drop to zero. But if someone lives across like over a mountain and you're trying to collaborate with them and you don't have access to digital tools, like obviously you can't form an organization with them. And then the third one is incentives amongst members to contribute. You need to this could be based on the mission and values of the organization, or it could be some other incentive structure that is provided within the organization. But yeah, so this article is talking about like three essential things that you need in order to like have an organization that functions and is actually like trying to achieve something. And so yeah, I mean that's pretty much it.
Thank you, sir. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, add some remarks. I really love this topic, governance and organizations. I really love understanding how human beings interact with one another and group themselves and behave in an organized manner. It's one of those topics I can just think about for a long time, and I really enjoy it. After reading Chirag's article and then reading Sume's article on the first principles of organization, I thought about like combining the two ideas. Like Chirag essentially focuses on the spectrum between decentralized groups and central authorities, and I want to look through Sume's three principles through that lens. I want us to explore these three principles and try to understand how a decentralized community and how a central organization fit into these principles. To start off, there's principle number one, which is community and the shared principles and ideas. If I had to think about it and give my opinion, I would say that central organizations tend to be more efficient in achieving that goal. Just because practically it's easier to reach consensus when there's one powerful entity governing the group. It's easier to develop a culture that's uniform across the organization. It's just more practical than when you have a decentralized group and everyone's giving their ideas and opinions and there's no consensus. So that's the first principle. The second principle I saw was the cost of collaboration and knowledge sharing. So that one's definitely obvious as well. Decentralized groups definitely have more of an advantage in that sense. Whenever you have a central authority, there is abuse of power as well. If you look at a ton of these countries that have authoritarian regimes, they get themselves involved in a lot of censorship and ban their users from using social media platforms to congregate and meet in a way that doesn't align with the government's ideals. So in that sense, I would give decentralization. I would say decentralization has more of an advantage in achieving that principle. But then the third point is the one I find very interesting because I don't think there's a clear answer to that. It's very nuanced. It really depends on the type of person, really. Like, there are people that respond more to central authority. It's the reality. Some certain people just want security, stability, and they just want to be told what to do. Whereas a decentralized society fits the mold of people that have more initiative. As you mentioned earlier on, there are people that you mentioned earlier on that your sink or swim program is not for everybody, right? It's for people that are more have more of a startup mindset. So in that sense, in terms of incentives, it can go either way with decentralized and centralized groups. And you can really look at various examples of types of organizations when you're comparing decentralized and centralized groups and then applying them to these principles. You can look at families where certain parents will constantly debate, like, what do I do? Do I impose strict rules on my kids, or do I let them roam free and explore? You can look at government where they're single party states that impose their rule, but then they're able to maintain a cities with law and order and social structure and cleanliness. Then at the same time, you get mistakes from having a central authority that can lead to costly, devastating effects. There are many instances of that. You can look into companies and organizations. It varies between each company and the goals. For example, a surgeon would prefer a more central structure because you don't want to have everyone else giving their opinion when engaging in sensitive operations. You want to have one person making decisions. Whereas in a startup, anybody can make mistakes. Everybody has their blind spots and their confirmation bias. So it's okay sometimes if maybe someone who's like an employee disagrees with someone who's disagrees with a manager. So in that scenario, you would prefer a decentralized group. And finally, one example I really find interesting is the idea of international organizations, particularly the UN. The UN is a decentralized body. A lot of people criticize it because it has no army, it has no ability to impose the international laws I don't even think it imposes law. It creates laws. It enacts. It creates resolutions, which barely have any enforcement power. So people criticize that body a lot. They say, how are countries supposed to be governed? But the reality is that there are benefits to a decentralized group like the UN, in the sense that although there's no way to enforce any of these rules, it opens up all these countries to communication. It reduces the cost of collaboration between nations. So, for example, in the general, like before the UN was established, there was the League of Nations, and before that, countries engaged in closed-door diplomacy, and that was reserved mainly to the main superpowers. So smaller countries and smaller nations didn't really have any say. But then once the UN was established, you had the General Assembly, and it was a perfect opportunity for smaller countries to suddenly have a voice and engage in diplomacy with other nations. So I think this is a wonderful topic. It's very nuanced. People will always have their views on it, and seeing it through different lenses is probably the best way, in my opinion, to start engaging in a very constructive discussion and arrive at a good conclusion. Yeah, if anybody wants to add anything, debate me on anything, I'm open.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm getting ready. Oh, I'm getting ready. Yeah. There are a couple things.
here.
There are a couple things that you said that I want to take issue with. I think it'd be fun.
Okay.
But I also want to prime Bad Ronin. Although there's like a secret movement within WEquil School to try to get him to rebrand
To Good Ronin.
to either Good Ronin or Master Ronin. Like
or
we could
Awesome
both be
Ronin.
we could both be Master Ronin. He
happy, friendly, collaborative Ronin.
he mentioned at one point, like when my wife and Zainab asked him about this, his response was, "Well, I'd be comfortable with Darth Ronin." I'm like, that's even worse, man. But I'm gonna pick on you a little bit, Ronan, just because like your background is, I think, quite useful in terms of shedding some light on this, because one, you've worked your career in the Navy, which of course is much more hierarchical, but at the same time, your own sort of personality is very entrepreneurial. And from what you've told me, like your approach to managing teams is one in which it's very similar to WEquil Group. It's about empowerment, understanding who they are, what their interests are, and trying to give them opportunities to exercise that. So before while you maybe put your thoughts in order on that one, this first issue of shared mission and principles. So one of the assertions that you made, Rishi, is that this might be easier to do in a more hierarchical organization, and I would take issue with that. The reason why, I can give some examples. So just because you have somebody at the top that's setting the rules doesn't mean that you have consensus, right? I would put organizations like this, I would call them fragile as opposed to anti-fragile. Countries that have, authoritarian dictatorships, right? Or even just going back, basically forever through human history, you're going to have that same kind of organization where there's somebody at the top that's making the rules, and everybody else has to kind of abide by those rules. The challenge there is, sometimes the people within that organization will believe and have the shared mission and principles of that. So, like, take like countries that have a strong shared sense of identity, like in the U.S. because of trade, or in some countries because of religious views. For example, you might have more social cohesion. But if you don't have that, then I think it gets very, very precarious, right? And you can also have organizations where if people don't really enjoy it, maybe they don't agree, maybe the leader of the organization is not like an inspirational leader, and they're doing things that folks aren't happy with. Like I know at one point there were a lot of folks at Facebook that were not happy with Mark Zuckerberg, and various like letters people were writing about, how they were managing data. And so you might have a breakdown in that social cohesion. And it doesn't mean that the organization collapses, but are you getting the most out of the people in that organization? If they don't agree with what the leadership is doing, then are they really going to be motivated to want to contribute to that organization. So does that make sense, Rishi? Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. It does. I was thinking about it more like maybe that this point needs to be explored more before I make an absolute statement like that. But what would the solution be, though? Would decentralizing an organization also solve the issue? Because that's what I'm wondering as well. I mean, many times human beings respond to a powerful figure or an absolute authority, especially maybe I'm looking at it through the lens of people who are probably going through a desperate time or a struggle. Because, for example, if you look at World War II, I mean, I'm saying a figure like Adolf Hitler, as terrible and reprehensible as he was, still gathered a ton of support amongst the German population. And in my opinion, that had to do a lot with the fact that he embodied this sense of strong authority, and he responded heavily to the groups, to the country's psychology. So, would central authorities be better in that scenario? And let's say, would a decentralized power have been effective in that case? Is what I'm asking, because I do see your point, and like I can't say I'm like heavily convicted with the statement I just made, but I'm also not like entirely sure if decentralization is the absolute end all for everything. If I'm making any sense.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm not sure either.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, Ronan knows for sure. How's it going, man?
Yeah, there you go. Well, number one, I try to avoid talking about Hitler because it's still a hot button for a lot of people. But I will just say 1930s, 1940, early 1940s Germany needed a strong government because I mean they were in a massive depression. They just came out of World War One, and they caused a lot of their problems themselves. Just came out of World War One, they were in a depression, and so they needed a strong central government to get them out of that. Now they went way too far, and all the atrocities that happened is inexcusable. But the country needed a strong central government. All the other stuff was ridiculous, and I won't even validate any of that.
They're horrible things.
But they needed one thing that you can say about him is he. I hesitate to say it this way, but he was a people person. He could. Well, I mean, now let me clarify that.
He's working it out. Yeah,
he was very good at working the crowd.
Sure.
That's what he was good at. He was very good at that. So, and that's what the country needed at the time. But yeah, a centralized government or centralized leadership. So yeah, in the Navy, we have a hierarchy system. You have different ranks and it goes up. With the different divisions and departments that I've had, all the guys in my division, they report to me, or when I was the department head of my shore duty, basically everybody at the command reported to me. And there were certain jobs that we had to do. There were certain taskers, and I had certain people placed in certain positions because they were good at that. They were really good at writing quality assurance packages, or they were really good at teaching certain maintenance items to the junior sailors, that kind of thing. I had a guy that was just wired to do all the parts ordering, that kind of, the supply system. So I put them in charge of it. They reported to me, but it was a lot of, here's your program, you're running it. If you don't like something, change it, and just let me know what you want to change. And 99% of the time, I'm probably going to say yes. Whereas a lot of guys, like the chief that they had before me, he was not like that at all. It was, it was my way or the highway. This is the way we're doing things, and that's the end of it. And the division and the department and the ship suffered for it because he really just put a damper on free thought and coming up with ideas. And hey, this isn't working. I think I know how to fix it. Can we try this? That question would never be asked of him. Whereas when I got there, I started letting them have some free reign. I said, you guys want to? Is there anything you guys want to do? Let me know. We'll try it out. And they started taking me up on that, and more things would come up. And hey, can we try this out? Yeah, really? Why not? Let's do it. So, in a certain sense, we had a centralized authority. You have to have somebody who's overall in charge to keep the team on track, because when you're decentralized, it's very, very easy to get off track, right? You need to have a prime directive. This is the goal. This is the direction we're going into. And with collaborations, they are usually very successful. However, it is very easy to fall into the trap of going a million different ways without having, that one person or some kind of a governing body. Usually one person's best to maintain the focus on the prize. We need to go from A to B, but how we get there, we can get a little creative, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. I agree with everything you said. So the maybe talking about what a first principle is useful here. So in the article that Sumi and I wrote talking about these three principles, we weren't trying to say, oh, here's the best way to achieve this. We were just saying that, look, the more any organization has a sense of shared mission and values, that really helps in terms of
Well,
creating a more successful organization.
that is absolutely true. And not to use the Navy again, but with the Navy, with the military in general, you have what's called core values. Like we just call them core values. Honor, courage, commitment. Um, Everyone's core values have to be aligned the same. And when you stray from that, well, you're demonstrating the inability to conform to a military lifestyle. Now, those core values aren't, there's a lot of morality that goes with them, and you can develop other core values with them, but the group has a general direction that we go. Kind of with WEquil, we have a general direction. It's a little bit more focused, but it's a general direction which way we're going. We have a core set of beliefs and a core set of values, and this is the direction that we're going. We can get creative on the way there, though. So
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And we've had ebbs and flows in terms of how we might, like the degree to which we weigh self-direction in
mhm.
collaboration. Um, like, so I know when we first started building out the WEquil app and scaling the team 6 months ago, we were really pushing self-directed collaboration on the side of you all need to act like entrepreneurs. More recently, as we were scaling more quickly, had a lot of new people, it started to become more confusing. I started to go in more as like almost like command and control, right? So I'm on Zoom calls with everybody and starting to become more directive, but that was kind of recognizing what was needed. So I'm not necessarily
I
like
think
a
then that's
zealot.
when you come in and when some things such as what is the goal and how am I supposed to try to contribute to the goal, when those things start to fall out of place, not necessarily like here's what you need to do, but like here's the process that we have to implement, here's the structure that is going to actually make this work, when that starts falling out of place.
Well,
So
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, even when you have you're all are familiar with think tanks, right? Where you got a whole group of people and they just come up with cool ideas.
Yeah,
So
I'd say that like our entire leadership team is a giant think tank, and then Vishal has to like clean up afterward and be like, okay, guys,
right.
we're gonna do.
Even with a think tank, a traditional think tank, there's a goal. There's a problem that you have to solve. We need to figure out how to solve this problem. This is the direction. This is what the goal is. These are our marching orders. Even in that kind of a scenario, you have a path forward. You just have to figure out how you're going to lay the bricks, right? That's how it is. So even in these purely collaborative scenarios, you have a general direction and a goal. So it's that's the way it works.
Yeah. Well, we might switch this up a little bit and talk about capital market implications. So one of the implications that I've been talking with the team about more and more is the startup boom, which is we put a publication up on intuiticon.com, which is the website for WEquil Capital. I think this was maybe 3 months ago, talking about this change. There are a record number of people that are saying that they're starting new companies. And during that podcast, I argued that this was actually probably a gross underestimate. I know for a fact that they don't include Isla in their statistics, even though she very much is like driving a startup with blend and mix. They're certainly not including Sume. They're not including Abanov. They're probably not including Ronan either, even though Ronan is very much an entrepreneur, and the kinds of things that he's collaborating with us on are creating tremendous value. The kinds of things that we could do with WEquil Craft, like we've talked about. I think Rishi had this really amazing idea the other day. He was like, why don't within those plots we allow people to create something that we can then create like a three-dimensional model of, like some kind of a GIF. We lock that into an NFT and we sell that, right?
You could also
Like
scan
something
it and
like
then 3D print it.
something,
You
yeah,
can.
you print it. What?
You can do that.
Yeah. So like this is very entrepreneurial, but you're not.
Yeah.
But
It's called Schematica.
yeah, the statistics are not capturing that. In Boya, they probably are capturing in Boya, in terms of like the stats on that one. Rishi Vishal, probably not, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
Because basically you guys were already documented as being, working for the family company.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so that's off the grid. Then you have all these guys. I was talking to Janaid about like we're trying to stereotype like the typical middle-aged man, especially, just seems to have a lot of like side hustle things going on, right? Where they'll have this project, or there's so many of them that most of the guys that I know have something going on, and in the back of their mind they're thinking, how can I make this big? How can I make this work? um and it's so easy to pursue that now because we have computers in our pockets, right? So even just trying to, this is why, if you don't have a shared mission and values with, like, let's say your job, your corporate job or what have you, how easy is it, especially if you have your own office, to not be as dedicated, because you're on your phone talking to folks about the side hustle, and like you're taking a look at your website traffic, or you're looking at competitors' products on Etsy, to see how you might be able to undercut them. Or I mean, it's so easy now to pursue these innovations, or some kind of business idea, and it's like impossible for anybody to track it or stop you. Um, so I think that this has really massive implications, um, I don't like the general view right now is that it's the labor that's like in factories or service jobs, like working at restaurants, where you're seeing a lot of the competition. I actually agree with Junaid that a lot of the competition is actually going to be for higher skilled labor,
Mhm.
folks that are more inquisitive and hardworking, um, that have a lot more options. These people have another option now, and it's so easy to go that route in terms of starting something on their own. So I think this plays into the labor market, supply demand for labor. I think it's going to get increasingly difficult for corporates if they don't have these core principles of an organization driving them forward. Then now they have to compete with this other option. So feel free to react to that.
Yeah. So I think one of the big factors that is leading to startup boom, as you said, is there are technologies that are making it a lot easier for startups to occur. But I think the other factor, in my opinion, is that life in general for a lot of people is becoming easier with different technologies. And what tends to happen with that is, in order to be creative, in order to be entrepreneurial, in order to have a startup, you have to have a certain level of energy, right? A certain level of time where you can breathe and be creative. And as life continues to get easier for a lot of people, as technology continues to facilitate our lives, where we have a little bit extra time, where we're not spending as much time commuting, where we're able to work a little bit more and in the times and spaces we want. That kind of extra cognitive ability allows people to be more creative and entrepreneurial, and therefore think about new products they can create or new services they can create. So I think if that's the general trend that we're headed to, where life is becoming a bit more fun and easier for people, and I know that's not the case for a lot of people in the world, but that is the direction that it seems we're heading in. I think that's a big factor that contributes to a startup boom as well.
Yeah, it's not as much. Well, so just look at entertainment as a percent of GDP. Like look at how people are spending their time as a percent of the seconds in a day. Like a larger and larger portion of how we live and what generates value is something that is enjoyable. And so yeah, that's why I think that these lines are blurring. That's where the added capacity to do it is coming from. It's not like the immigrants that would come in. Some of the stories of immigrants 200 years ago would come, and immediately they would start making aprons, right, or making socks, or just coming up with some way of producing something that they could use to sell, to make it, to survive, right? I can guarantee you that making that promo video for Ronan this morning, even though it was a bit of a distraction, I was having a little bit too much fun. That's quote work, right? And seeing his reaction, his text of just all capital letters, wow. And then me going on Slack and seeing that he had already like created some Hogwarts like castle. And I was like, I get to make another promo video soon. And that's part of my job now. I love my job. I could do this even more. I mean, I've averaged 80 hours a week probably for the past 20 years, but I could probably nice. Oh man. Yeah. Hanging out with you guys. I talked to Rishi and Vishal about philosophy of life for like 3 hours yesterday. That was a big part of my job. It was so much fun. We're gonna do a 3D printing meetup with a bunch of kids soon here, where we're inspiring them to create things. That's part of our job. Yeah, you're right. It's not everybody. It certainly isn't.
It is a 3D printer.
but for a lot of people, it is going that way. I mean, you're seeing people trying to make a living by making threads on Twitter, for example, right? Like people are getting creative, trying to be productive or make money in a variety of different ways, because nowadays that's possible, right? It's possible to make money with a YouTube channel or a Twitch stream, or being an influencer on Instagram or Twitter. And some of those things can add a lot of value to the world, some of them can't, but the point is the options are there. And as life, as technologies can help us, make life easier and facilitate things, it allows many of us to have more of that time and that energy to think creatively and think of new projects we want to take, and not just be stuck in that grind of, okay, you wake up in the morning and you know what you got to do for the next several hours, and then drive 2 hours back home, and by the time you're back home you're exhausted, and then you need to cook dinner. And it's hard to be creative and be entrepreneurial under those circumstances. So I think it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy of, when you, as things, as startups and as technologies are enabling our lives to be better, it allows us to further that and create those technologies and further those services that can help that effect magnify. But that's not the case for a lot of people, and it's going to take time, but that's the direction it seems we're headed in.
Yeah. Well, Sume is actually going to be testing for her black belt here soon.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Taekwondo.
Yeah.
Good.
I didn't pass.
She hasn't passed it yet.
Yay!
So that's another reason for it's actually, I didn't know. I totally forgot when I was talking to you guys about combining these. It has nothing to do with that. But I am glad that we can take a look at that. So I want to wrap things up here, point out a few things for everybody, and then we can go. So one, if you are interested, if you find these conversations interesting, and you'd like to learn more about what's going on, we have a new process for joining WEquil group. So all you have to do is go to wequil.com and click the join button, and you'll go to a Google form. That so far the feedback's actually been really great. As far as forms go, people actually like this form because we're asking them questions about their passions, what they want out of life, and ways that we can help them within our learning community based on what they're seeing. So we have a team that's monitoring the inputs from those forms so that we can help you to know where to go, because if you don't, we're doing so many things, it can be very overwhelming. So we're helping to address that by streamlining that. We also have 4 different teams that you create a project to join those teams as well. The 4 teams are the school, capital, startups, and the app. So if you want to take on a leadership role within the school and be part of that team, we're calling those individuals mentors. And so all you would need to do is create a project basically saying how you'd like to create some sort of initiative within the school to help the community. Hopefully something that you really want to do. If it's not something you want to do, you're doing WEquil wrong. Then within capital, we're very much interested in collaborating with folks that are actively investing, both to grow their financial capital, but also their human and digital capital as well. And we help do that, just the way that we did the other day, interviewing Shay with his work on Invite. That was pretty great. It got maybe 500 views within 2 days, which is a lot for us. So we're happy to do that for investors anywhere. If you show proof of work, we will help you grow digital capital, and we're probably the learning community for you because we love doing that. We love learning by doing, and a great way to do that is to write. People that want to join WEquil startups, these would include entrepreneurs, developers, angel investors. If you want to be featured there, if you want more active assistance getting exposure for your startups, you would then, to join that team, submit another project talking about what your startup is or what you're looking to invest in or what skills you have to develop. So that's available. And then Mboya is leading our technical team. He's our CTO, to join any of our Flutter applications, the WEquil app team, those developers. You would submit your career description. You tell us what you want to do. You tell us how much you want to get paid. Usually you do that after a week or 2 or 3 of demonstrating your skills. It's up to you how long you do that. As soon as you feel like you're ready, come in and negotiate. Tell us what you want to do. So we really love this new process. We think it helps to simplify. It also shows proof of work, which gets to that first principle. How do we have people that have shared mission and value? Well, one is that they show proof of work and they self-select to be part of a global learning community that learns by doing. So if that does not interest you, don't come, because we want to have a very healthy, beautiful organization of people that love what we do. But if that does interest you, we would love to hear from you. So go to WEquil.com, sign up there. You can join one of our happy hours, or maybe we'll meet you on WEquil Craft. Who knows? Somewhere in the metaverse, we will find you on your preferred platform. So with that, I really appreciate everybody here. This is the highlight of my week, and that's saying a lot. So you guys take care, and wonderful.
All right. Bye, everybody.